think we've done a pretty good job of spreading out, taking in almost all the folks that we know who ended up in Jackson. In general, it was our parents' generation. After World War II, St. Anne's community really started to trail off. Almost all of the young men returning from World War II chose not to come back to farm at St. Anne's, but a large percentage of them were in Jackson, and the family has just spread out from there. It's sort of sad that the community has almost disappeared, but the land is still there. It's something to be treasured by the family.
Well, one thing, your uncle, Mike, had a store in Jackson, and that was kind of a jumping off place. Somebody needed a job, Mike would put them to work. And even Paul, my brother, he was going to try and work for the steel industry in Indiana. That didn't work out. He came back with his wife, newly married, and Mike put him to work. And he always says about Mike Harkins, Brady and Harkins' store, that he taught him a lot. Well, he would be sweeping, and Mr. Mike would say, "You sweep like you mean it."
When we lived on Taylor Street in Jackson, and the migration from rural to urban living began, half of my aunts and uncles at one time or another lived with us. I distinctly remember my Aunt Teresa living with us and playing basketball and being a cheerleader at St. Joe, the same high school where I finished. My Uncle Bud, who's Patricia Swenson's father and worked in the florist business with John Patrick's father, John Harkins, in Jackson here for a while. He lived with us on Taylor Street and worked there until he married and moved to Baton Rouge, where he picked up with the florist business there. Thomas Harkins, the youngest, he came and lived with us and went to St. Joe for a while there and went into the home building business and just did extremely well, very well. I think he's probably one of the most well-known Harkins in the community, Jackson community, as far as building homes. And Ansley Harkins, the same statue. He was a very successful home builder here, but now Ansley was out there on the farm to the last moment with my grandmother, Mary, and he and Mary moved to Jackson at the same time.
My dad, Edmund Hickey, died at 42 years of age, moved from Illinois, and how our wonderful Harkins, Mississippi family gathered all of us in and helped us to heal from our loss. They were very instrumental in helping us grow and being there for us and loving us. And you know, Mom, by herself with 6 kids, it wasn't easy. So they were and they still are a blessing to us. You know, Uncle Ansley built our home. And,
Really?
In 1958. And Mom chose this little lot because it was so close to St. Richard's.
Yeah.
She wouldn't have to drive us. We could just get on our bikes or walk over to St. Richard's and go to school. And Mom worked over there for a while with Mrs. Lovett in the kindergarten class, and with Sister Serena being principal.
Yeah.
You know, we had to be on our best behavior. Even though the good Lord took our dad, he opened another window for us.
Yeah.
Which I'm thankful of. But you know, being from a big family, that was the fun of it all, I think, is to say, well, that's my cousin over there.
Absolutely.
You know, proud of this, proud of that. So, well, do you know, I remember driving on, or getting on the Bloodstack bus at St. Richard's and going out to St. Joe. When they moved it out off of Northside Drive, I believe.
Yeah.
And that little bus would pick up as many as they could from St. Richard's and took us out there, which helped my mom.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't run back and forth.
Right.
At one point, Mary G. moves next door to us on Druid Hill. 1961, it snowed in Jackson. And we brought a sled from Illinois. We were the only ones on the street with a sled. And we had the best snowball fight with Mary G. and the Hickeys. To have a snowball fight, with her in 1961 was just a joy. How often would that happen? She was the cutest little thing. Just a small little lady, but a tough lady. But that's how, probably why it helped him to survive and to succeed. Mm-hmm. And
didn't have
to
a choice.
forge forward. He didn't have a choice.
Yeah.
He didn't have a choice. So.
We had many incidences that are very vivid in my mind, like the deep well went out. Water that obviously had too much iron or had some type of problem. And we could not use it for cooking, and it got where we had to haul water from down at the Studi and Peter Harkins place, and Buddy Harkins and myself hauled in gallon buckets when that thing would go bad. And shortly after one of the incidences where this was happening, they got busy and found an easier way and dug a deep well that pumped water. And it was very much one of those luxuries at that time, because the living during those years was pretty crude. They had no running water, no electricity, and finally those things came along and living was a lot better. They only got to enjoy a few years of that type of living. When the well went out, when the deep well went out, Ansley Harkins and Buddy and I were the males present. And so Ansley decided he was going to get some of the tenant farmers in there to help out with getting the water restored, and why, I don't know. But they had to send one of the tenant farmers down into the well in some kind of crude device that they had rigged up to do something. And I don't know if it was to dig out some sand or to do what, but there was 3 people that I remember by name that were domestic helpers around here. One of them's name was Frog, one of them's name was Bodick, and then there was one named Mott. Mott helped my grandmother in the house, and Frog and Bodick were the tenant farmers that worked the fields. They got into a big knockdown drag out about who was going to go down in that well. They were both afraid. And for some reason, I remember that they finally got it settled, and Ansley Harkins, my uncle, intervened, and they picked one of them, and one of them went down into the well.
A huge artesian well up there. My daddy one time showed me a pipe, and shoot, it was that big around. And Daddy said when he was little that it came 2 or 3 feet out of that pipe, and it went down into this little bottom, and there was a pond down there, and he said it was 10 feet deep, so you could see the bottom of it, see fish in there swimming around. But now there is a drinking water spring over there that Nanny and probably 4 generations drank water out of that spring. That when I lived there, I had dug the spring out and put a big old, flat rock like that, and you could take a bath. There were 3 different pools they had dug out, but it was in the hog lot. Mm-hmm. Okay, the hogs drink out of the one out at the bottom. The next one up is where you might take a shower or a bath or something like that. Mm-hmm. And then the next one up above there was where they got the drinking water. And you stand on that rock and wrap that bucket, bust the ice. It's like pouring a bucket of razor blades over you, but you had a date, or something like that, and had some reason to knock the dirt off of you. They drank out of that spring, though. They walk over there. They had a well in the yard, but they walk over to that spring and get all the drinking water. Sweet water. You wanted to make my grandmother mad, you mess with her rain barrel water, or you throw something in that well. Either one of them. Woo, she'd get hot. Well, they had that well, and I remember it real well, so I had to have been 8 or 9. You drop that long bucket. I've got a bucket back in the back too. That long bucket down in there, and you have to pull it up real fast because the leather flappers on the bottom would leak. You have to pull it up real fast and dump it. You wouldn't have about half a bucket by the time you get it back up. You drop it back down in there, load it back up, and take off again, you know, and dump about half a bucket. But it wasn't very good drinking water. You know, it was okay, but it had a lot of sulfur, iron, but not if you went over to that spring. That spring was just as clear and sweet as it could be. Sometimes Big Daddy and Solomon would bring me back to Jackson, and we always stopped, and I have no idea where it was, but we always stopped at this little culvert, you know, and there was an artesian well there, and Big Daddy would bring all these jugs, you know, gallon jugs and one thing and another, and we'd fill all these jugs up full of water, and that was, you know, for their drinking water. You know, if it was sweet enough for them to stop on the side of the road like that and get it. It's just like when you left Nanny's house, we weren't but an hour from home and all that, but she made sure that you had water, made sure that you had something to eat, that, you know, on and on like that. You were not leaving her house without a little goodie bag. Her mindset was horse and buggy. That's what she had done. That you do not leave out with a horse and buggy without water. You know, because you can go down the road and, you know, the harness can break and the horse runs off and you're sitting there like, sure would like a drink of water.
Other than that, we were still getting water from our well, which was a bored well. We had a wash stand on the back gallery of the house, and a water bucket and a dipper, and everybody drank out of the same dipper, and we weren't the worst for it. So.
I watched them dig that well up at Deep Hats, and it was pretty good size, and it was a bucket with an auger on the bottom, and it was a big wood dowel looking thing. And it probably took them maybe a day or two to dig it. Still, you didn't have to go down about 20 foot to hit water up there.
The old original barn that my great-granddaddy built, we played in it, we put hay in it. They had corn cribs that we threw corn into and ground into grain for the cows for the winter. Hunted the land with my dad for years, and I still live here on top of the hill. Keep growing crops. We have crops also. I have a son that lives below the hill, and he's pretty interested in keeping things going. I have a brother that lives down at the bottom of the hill also, Teddy. He hangs around, hunts. He's the image of my dad. He just loves to hunt and fish and be outdoors. But now when Mom and Dad moved here, I can remember Mama telling me that they grew crops down there where that deer stand is in the pasture. They grew a cotton crop. And it was that one year that they decided that farming was not for them. They had to find something else to do to raise a family in. But the terraces are still in that pasture, part of the pasture, where they built terraces to keep the water flow in the right spots when it would rain, instead of making roots.
Ansley Harkins and Buddy Harkins and I got together and we set up a family corporation when I was practicing law, which was several years ago, and every member of the family's got a little part of that now. It's about 500 acres up there, and it's a pretty nice little timber farm. We managed to hang on to it, and I think everybody's very proud of what was done, and the leadership from Ansley and Buddy, and I'm just glad to have had a little part in it, of setting everything up for them. Has really meant a lot to the family. I think everybody appreciates it. It's something that will always be there. I doubt anybody will ever do anything as far as getting rid of that. I think it'll just always live on with some of these heirs that are coming down through us now. You know?